As I mentioned tonight, we're going to do two Parashiot, Shemot and Vaera, to catch up. The two Parashiot actually go together. Am Yisrael goes down to Mitzrayim. After the last of the brothers, Levi, passes away, the She'ibud, the actual bondage, begins. And it becomes more and more difficult with time. It becomes very, very difficult right before the Geulah, right before the Am Yisrael is redeemed. But what is the purpose of this whole bondage? Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want the Jewish people to go through slavery, to spend all these years amongst the Egyptians, not the most refined people? What do they get out of this? Even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu does many things with one action, one of the most important ideas behind Galut Mitzrayim is to prepare the Jewish nation for Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is forming the Jewish people. These are the children of Yaakov, their descendants. The Torah has not been given earlier. Only now HaKadosh Baruch Hu is about to give the Torah to a nation, a Torah that consists of many mitzvot, a nation that will be given a very important mission, and it won't be easy to fulfill. So this nation has to be prepared psychologically, emotionally, physically, to be able to handle this important task. And by bringing them through Mitzrayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepares them by becoming slaves or servants to the Egyptians. In this way, their hearts are training themselves to become subordinate, or subservient to a higher being, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, by preparing them mentally and physically through the bondage to the Egyptians, this will help them in some ways to be able to accept the yoke of heaven, to be able to accept the mitzvot for years to come. So there's some necessity in this servitude, in this hard labor, for the purpose of receiving later on the Torah mitzvot. The Midrash also says that Egypt serves as a kura barzel, as a refinery of sorts, to refine Am Yisrael from any pesolet, from any residue that they still may have in their neshama. After all, we explained that finally Yaakov gives birth to 12 tzaddikim. We no longer have Abraham giving birth to a Yishmael and a Yitzhak. Yitzhak giving birth to Esav and Yaakov. There was some pesolet, some unrefined characteristic left over from before. Yaakov gives birth to 12. They're all tzaddikim. There's no more pesolet. But there is still a little bit. After all, they were able to sell Yosef, their own brother, to Mitzrayim. Then we see that there must be still some pesolet there, and that pesolet has to be removed before Am Yisrael receives the Torah Kedosha. Everything has to disappear as much as possible, and that happens in the Kur HaBarzel, in that refinery called Egypt. An additional advantage of spending time amongst the Egyptians is that Am Yisrael, being the minority, will react in the same way that many minorities behave in a strange land. They stick together. So this also will hopefully help them in Ahdut, in unifying, in becoming one nation, one people, a very important midah that will be necessary later on in the fulfillment of the Torah mitzvot. In order to continue with this mission successfully, they will have to remain together, not split. So perhaps the spending these years in Egypt as a minority helps them in this respect as well. One of the questions that are asked by the commentaries is, but how come in Egypt? Of all places, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could not find a more comfortable place, a different setting. Egypt, after all, is full of witchcraft, full of tum'ah, full of znut and prostitution, more than any other nation, more than any other country in the world at the time. So why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu choose Egypt as the place for galut, for the Jewish people? There are various explanations given, one of which is that Am Yisrael has a chance to be able to see the vast difference between the Kedusha and the Tum'ah. They're about to be elevated to the greatest heights. They have that potential. Here they're given an opportunity to see to what depth mankind can sink. What is the opposite extreme of a Kedusha? It is here in Egypt. It says Tum'ah. Appreciate, therefore, the Torah that you're getting, because it's going to put you all the way on top and not Chaz v'Shalom in the bottom, where these people are. Am Yisrael, therefore, is able to see the great difference between what is expected of them and what this nation, the Egyptians, has gotten themselves into. Another reason why Hashem sends them to Egypt is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is about to perform great miracles. And there's always the danger that some smart aleck might come and say, this is not a miracle, this is not a sign from heaven, this is witchcraft. I can do it too. But if the Egyptians, who are the masters of witchcraft, if they admit that this is Etzba Elokimhi, this is the Yad Hashem, the hand of Hashem, if the Egyptians can say that, if they admitted it, then everyone else in the world would have to accept it too. There must be a creator. If the Egyptians concluded that this is not witchcraft, then everybody else would follow suit as well. So another idea of why Hashem performs all the miracles, Dafka in Mitzrayim. But what about the hardship? All the hardships, after all, if whoever reads the Midrashim, the Torah, the many stories of what went on during all these years in Egypt, the Jewish people suffered greatly. It's one thing to be in the Galut, but why so much suffering? What's the purpose of suffering so much? Even though we explain that there is an idea over here of removing any residue, any pesolet, but nevertheless they suffered greatly, a lot. What is that for? One of the ideas of why Hashem sometimes brings hardship on any individual, but even on all of Am Yisrael, is in order for them to pray. Hashem wants us to pray to Him, to turn to Him. He wants us to become humble before Him, to continuously remember Him, and sometimes the hardships are intended to awaken us to pray to Him. One of the ideas of increasing the suffering in Mitzrayim is that Am Yisrael should pray to Hashem, shorten the Galut. We know we're supposed to be in the Galut, but who said that it's supposed to last for 210 years? Shorten it. And in reality, even though they spent many years in Egypt, the actual suffering was not every single year that they were there. Hashem wants us to pray to Him to shorten the Galut. Hashem wants us to pray to Him so that we should leave the Galut. Because Chaz v'Shalom, if we do not pray, there will be an accusation. There can be an accusation. The Jewish people are comfortable where they are. They don't want to leave. They love America. They're not asking to go back to Israel. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes makes it difficult so that there should be no categoria. There should be no kitrug, no accusation. Am Yisrael automatically responds to the hardships and turns to Hashem in prayer. Now what happens, Chaz v'Shalom, if Am Yisrael does not humble themselves, does not turn to Hashem in prayer? Rabbis warn us, L'atid lavo, in the future, which is our times and our generation, if Am Yisrael does not do teshuvah, does not turn to Hashem, ma'amid alehem melech kashe kehaman. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will allow a king to rise to power whose decrees will be as difficult as the decrees of Haman or Khomeini. The names are very similar. And there's such a king in every time, in every generation, in any country. There could be such an individual who will give the Jewish people a hard time, who will oppress them. With what idea? For what purpose? To bring them, to turn them to Hashem. So if they don't do so on their own, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes has to bring it out by electing a president. It could be. It doesn't have to be a king, who will not be so sympathetic to the Jews. And through the troubles, and through the lack of sympathy that he will show the Jews, perhaps Am Yisrael will turn to Hashem. Moshe is the Mashiach. He is the one that's chosen to lead Am Yisrael, to redeem Am Yisrael from Egypt. Why Moshe of all people? What did this man have that nobody else had? Moshe is chosen simply because of his humbleness. As you can see in the Parashat, it says, Vayar b'sivlotam. Moshe went out, even though he was raised in the palace, as you know the story, he was raised amongst the Egyptians, very high standard of living. He knew he was a Jew. He went out to see b'sivlotam. He went out to see the pain of his brothers. Vayar b'sivlotam means that he sympathized with them. It hurt him to see their plight. And that is a very, very important characteristic, that one is considerate, that one sympathizes with the plight, with the suffering of someone else. That is a very important midah, because the only way that one can be mitzta'er, that one can feel the pain of the Shekhinah, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is if first he is able to feel the pain of another human being. How could we expect of somebody to feel the pain of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which we cannot see, if we don't see and sympathize with the pain of another human being? Moshe Rabbeinu has this characteristic. He's a very sensitive individual. He sees the plight of his brothers, and he does something about it too. He takes their side. He sympathizes with them. There's a story told about the Baba Sali, Zechet Tzadik Livracha. The story was told by his wife after, I think, the Baba Sali passed away, that she once went into his room after midnight. Now, you know what happens at midnight. The tzaddikim, whoever can, do something called tikkun chatzot. It's a very special tikkun where they cry for the Khurban, for the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, for the pain that the Shekhinah has, that the Am Yisrael is in the Galut. And she went into the room somehow after he had finished, and she saw a whole puddle on the floor. It was a puddle from the tears that he shed for the Galut of Shekhinah, for the Galut of Am Yisrael, for the pain that that we're all going through. In order to reach this level of being able to cry so much, to shed so many tears, I mean, this man obviously feels the pain of every single Jew, and of course feels the pain of the Shekhinah as well. That is how he can bring himself to cry so much. This ability to feel for the pain of others, the ability to sympathize with others, can only come if someone is anav, if somebody is humble. Humbleness, as we will see, is a very, very important midah. It's extremely important midah, because whoever has it, whoever possesses this midah, will not run into the problem of speaking lashon hara, of gossiping about others, or making fun of others, for sure not, because he's a humble person. He doesn't think highly of himself. Person who is not humble, who chas v'shalom is a gaftan, is arrogant, he thinks more of himself, and therefore, because he thinks of himself, does not think of others. He thinks of himself first. Whereas the person who's humble does not think of himself as much, and therefore is able to feel for others. Moshe Rabbeinu, being a humble person, feeling for others, is puzzled. Why is the Jewish nation suffering so much? When he goes out and sees their pain, he's puzzled. He doesn't know what's going on. Why is Hashem making them suffer so much? What does the Torah tell us? That after a while he figures out what their problem is. Achen noda adavar. When he went out and tried to stop a fight between two Jews, what did one of them tell him? You want to kill us the way you killed the Egyptian? And Moshe says, oh, achen noda adavar. Apparently the word got out, what I did. What does it mean the word got out? So the commentaries explain, achen noda adavar. Now I understand why they're still in Galut, why they're suffering so much. There is lashon hara amongst them. They talk on each other, they tattletale, they gossip. Even though not everybody was like that, many were careful, but there were some. And that, of course, lengthened the galut and caused the great suffering that Am Yisrael had in Egypt. Now I understand, well, at least one of the reasons why they're suffering so much. Lashon hara, that can be a big problem in any society, but it's especially sensitive for the Jewish nation. And it was especially sensitive in Mitzrayim, because in Mitzrayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Am Yisrael the opportunity to be metaken, the avon, the sin of Mechirat Yosef. The selling of Yosef came about as a result of Lashon hara, that he spoke bad about them. So this is a midah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants repaired. Hashem wants it eradicated, especially before Am Yisrael is about to receive the Torah. You cannot have this kind of midah amongst them. Similarly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals to Moshe in a different fashion what the problem of Am Yisrael is. When he stuck out his hand and he saw all of a sudden that his hand was full of leprosy, that was also a hint, a sign that there is Lashon hara amongst the Jews, because the one who speaks Lashon hara is affected or afflicted by tzara'at, by leprosy. Another indication that Am Yisrael had this problem. And this Lashon hara, unfortunately, will extend the galut, this galut chas v'shalom, and any galut that Am Yisrael is in, until it is removed. Rabbis tell us that during the days of Shaul and David HaMelech, they were so great in Torah. Even the children knew all the Torah. But when they went out to do battle, they did not win many of their battles. Why not? They were great in Torah, because there was Lashon hara amongst them. Whereas in the days of Ahav, the king Ahav, where a great deal of Am Yisrael was Ovdei Avodah Zarah, idol worshippers. They went out and they were triumphant in the battles because there was no Lashon Hara amongst them. There was more Ahdut, more unity. We see what Lashon Hara causes, how it affects the Jewish people, how dangerous it is. Because in our generation Lashon Hara has become an epidemic, the Chafetz Chaim Zecher Tzadik Levracha went out of his way to do battle with this problem. He wrote a lot about Lashon Hara, the halachot of Lashon Hara, in other words, when you could say something, when you cannot say something, because he knew that this problem that existed back then still exists now, and is unfortunately causing an extension to this galut. There's something similar to Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara, when we speak about Lashon Hara, we mean somebody talking bad about someone. There's something called Misha Eno or Enav Tsar Ve'acherim, whoever's eye is narrow or stingy for the benefit of others. I can't think exactly of the word in English for it, but I'm sure there may be some word that describes this, where one is not happy if somebody else is happy. In Yiddish and in Hebrew, modern Hebrew, there's a word that describes it. It's called Ulo mefargen lasheni. It comes from the Yiddish word nish tzufarginen. In other words, that he does not give the individual the benefit of enjoying whatever he's enjoying. It's not that he's jealous, that he wants what he has for himself. He's not happy that the other one has what he has. It's called Ain Ra'ah, an evil or a bad eye or a narrow eye for the benefit of someone else. And all of that, of course, comes from a lack of anava, a lack of humbleness. Because one who thinks of himself would not think of someone else. He would not enjoy seeing somebody else being happy with whatever they just bought for themselves. A lack of anava is what brings this. Let me tell you a story, an incredible story, that emphasizes the importance of this midah of anava and the dangers of those who lack this midah. There was a great rabbi in Israel about 200 years ago. As you know, 200 years ago there were not many Jews in Eretz Israel, and the few Jews that were there were poor. And how were they supported? Many of them were supported by money, by tzedakah that came from Chutz La'aretz, from Europe. This rabbi used to receive some of that money, and he used to distribute it to whoever the money needed to be distributed. And it happened once that he had a question. Why are they sending so much money to this particular young man or young men? It was a group of young men who were religious, but he didn't think that they deserved so much of that money. Perhaps that money could be used differently, distributed equally amongst the poor. He didn't think that these young men should deserve all that money. He didn't see any special qualities. So the next time the messenger arrived from Europe, he told the messenger, I don't understand. Please ask the man who gave you the money, why does he think these people are more special than anybody else, that they should get all this money? That night he had a dream. In the dream, they told him, twice does it say me'od me'od. In the Torah it says, Tovah ha'aretz me'od me'od, that the land of Israel is very, very good. And in Pirkei Avot it says, me'od me'od veshefal ruach. Very, very much you should be humble. Why does it say Tovah ha'aretz me'od me'od? Why does the word me'od me'od appear with Eretz Israel? And why does me'od me'od appear with humbleness? In other words, is there a connection? And the answer is, there is a connection. As he later figured it out, what the dream was telling him. He later figured out that what the dream was saying is that only those who are very, very humble can see the beauty of Eretz Israel. That is why it says me'od me'od in Eretz Israel and me'od me'od by humbleness. If you're very, very humble, only then can you see the beauty in Eretz Israel. And once you're very humble and you can see the beauty in Eretz Israel, you would also be able to see the beauty that exists in every individual. The dream was telling him, in very harsh words, it is only because you are not humble that you're not able to see why these young men are so special, what's so special about them. If you teach yourself a little bit of humbleness, you will see how special these people are. After a while, of course, this is a rabbi, big rabbi, he taught himself to become humble, and he eventually realized that these young men were special and did deserve the tzedakah that they were receiving. It's sometimes as a result of lack of humbleness that we don't see how people are so special and how each individual has something special in him. The parasha goes on to explain the greatness of the women. We just spoke about some of the problems that existed amongst the Jews. However, the parasha goes to tell us about the greatness of the women. The women excelled. The women stand out in Parashat Shemot, in Galut Mitzrayim. And they stand out in more than one way. How do they stand out? The famous midrash that says, "B'zchut nashim tzidkaniot nigalu avotenu mimitzrayim." It was because of the merit of the righteous women that we left Egypt. What did they do, the righteous women? Well, at one point, the men wanted to stop giving birth. In other words, having children. They didn't want to marry and have children because Paro was decreeing that all the males should be thrown into the Nile. Why should we continue having children? But the women, nevertheless, encouraged their husbands, encouraged the men. They gave them strength, they gave them encouragement, and as a result of the action and of the initiative of the women, the men continued to procreate. So the women had a tremendous role in the Geulah of Am Yisrael from Egypt. Where did they take this strength from? How come they were courageous? How come they were strong and the men were so easily giving up? Perhaps a clue to the courage of the women is seen in two women who are mentioned by name in the parasha, Shifra and Pu'ah. These two women had a very, very difficult job. They were responsible for delivering the babies. What's the name of a woman who helps out in delivering a baby? A midwife, thank you. That's what they were. And Paro says, listen, you're midwives. You will have the responsibility of seeing whether it's a boy or a girl. If it's a girl, she stays alive. If it's a boy, you know what you do with it. They feared God. And because they feared God, they did not do as Paro asked them to do. And somehow they were able to get away with it. And they allowed the Jewish male boys to survive. The Torah emphasizes that they were God-fearing. What for? This is a very important emphasis because many people do things by their nature. Many people are kind by nature. They do things on their own without being told. The Torah says, no, the greatness of these women and of all the other women is that they feared God. And they did whatever they did only because of the fear for God, not because they were good-natured. It was not, don't think it was in their nature to do what they did. Somebody who does something by nature is admirable, but not as much if he does it because Hashem told him so. In other words, by his nature, he wouldn't want to do it. It would be difficult for him to do it. But Hashem told him so. It was through the Yirat Elokim, through the Yirat Hashem, the fear of Hashem, that the women got their strength and were willing to risk their lives even, as in the case of Shifra and Pu'ah, to go against the decree of Paro and to give encouragement to the husbands. What this was the fear for Hashem. This is what gave them their strength and encouragement. Now you can understand why Shlomo HaMelech speaks so highly about what kind of a woman. Isha Yirat Hashem hi tithalal. There are many beautiful women. There are many righteous women. There are many kind women. But the most important midah that a mother can have, that a wife can have, that a husband should be proud of, is if she's Yirat Hashem. It helps that she's a good cook, of course. It helps that she's good looking. It helps that she's intelligent. Sure, all of these things help. They're very helpful. But if you had a choice to pick one, only one, Isha Yirat Hashem, hi tithalal. That's the most important midah. Most important of everything. By the way, even though Shlomo speaks about the women, the same is true about the men. The woman had one choice. To choose one characteristic. Yirat Hashem obviously is more important than anything else. It helps, of course, that the man is hardworking and devoted and good-looking and smart and studious. But Yirat Hashem is more important than anything else. That is what builds a home. That is what builds a home, and that is why Shlomo HaMelech tells us in another pasuk, Chachmot nashim banta beita, v'ivelet beyadea tehersenu. The intelligent women, the ones who know how to manage the home properly, they are able to build up their home. But the ivelet, one who is a fool, she can destroy her home with her own hands. In other words, Shlomo HaMelech once again tells us that the woman has a very important role in the marriage. She can build a home, she can destroy the home. Yirat Hashem hitit halal, therefore. Sheker achen ve'evel hayofi. Right? Hen, which means grace, is sheker. It could be misleading. She smiles at you. So what? That could be misleading. Ve'evel hayofi. Yofi is good, it's important, but it's hevel. It's insignificant compared to Yirat Hashem. Yirat Hashem is more important than anything else. Okay, so finally Moshe is given the job. He finally accepts. He hesitated. Now Moshe runs into a big problem. Hashem promised him. This is towards the end of Parashat Shemot. Hashem promised him, I'm going to redeem the Jewish people. You're going to be the leader. You're going to take him out. You're going to speak to Paro. You're going to tell them. But what happens at the end? Moshe is puzzled. Hashem said, He promised He was going to redeem them, and all of a sudden, life becomes unbearable. It becomes even more difficult right before the Geulah. They have to fetch for their own hay to make their own bricks. It becomes even more difficult than before. Why? And Moshe asks this question to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayashov Moshe el Adonai vayomer Adonai lama harre'ota la'am hazeh lama zeh shelachtani. Why did you make things worse for this nation? Why did you send me? What does Hashem tell him at the end? Vayomer Adonai Moshe ata tir'eh. You will now see Asher yaseh leParo, what I will do to Paro. Ki biyad chazaka yeshelechem v'yad chazaka yegareshem me'atzor. That He will send them off with a very powerful hand. In other words, in a miraculous way, you will see how, against His will, Paro will eventually succumb, give up, and send off a Jewish nation. What is going on over here? What is he asking? He's simply asking, why are things worse than they were before? And what does Hashem tell him? You will see the meaning of this very, very soon. What will he see? Well, first of all, Hashem is telling him that the idea of the increase of the bondage, of the hardship, is in order to shorten the time. Hashem wants to shorten the time. In order to shorten the time, I have to bring about a little bit more pain. And that will be able to reduce the amount of years that they're going to spend in Egypt. Number two, you know why I'm going to increase the pain right before the Geulah? Because I want the entire world to know why the Egyptians are going to be punished. Because exactly what happens in Egypt will happen Latid Lavo. In the future, which is now, right before Mashiach comes, the nations will be punished. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take revenge from all the nations that persecuted the Jewish people. Why now? That caused us trouble in the past, so that everybody can see it's the same guys who caused us problems in the past. They are doing it to us again now. They're about to be punished. So Hashem therefore allows the pain to increase, allows the default and the gezerot, the decrease and the persecution to increase, in order that we should be able to see it's the same guys from before doing it all over again. The same anti-Semitic Europeans, the same Catholics from before, the same enemy from before. Their names have been changed, their faces are different, right? The countries are perhaps called something else now, but it's the same gang. Hashem therefore allows them to do whatever they want to do, to remind us and to remind to the entire world. Now you will understand why I'm after them, why I punish them. They're not being punished for nothing. They're being punished for whatever they did back then, because they're doing it now too. So in order for us to become familiar with this, in order for the world to understand why a particular country is being hit by some natural disaster, it will come out very clearly. The pain and the suffering will increase, and then we will know, oh, they are guilty because this is what they did in the past, because they're doing it now too. And that is what Hashem is doing in Egypt too. Lama re'ota, because I want you to see, and I want them to know that they deserve this for good reason. There's a famous philosophical question: why are the Egyptians punished if Hashem wanted the Jewish people to go into slavery? The Egyptians are only agents of Hashem. They're only doing what Hashem wants them to do. What's the answer? They didn't have to do it. That's a simple answer. The second answer is they did a lot more than Hashem asked them to do. Hashem did not ask them to throw the Jewish boys into the Nile. Their entire job, according to the Ramban, I believe, was to enslave the Jews. If that's all they would have done, they would not have been punished. After all, what are the makot? We don't have the time to go through every single makah, dam, sfardea, kinim. We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes midah keneged midah, an eye for an eye, measure for measure. All these makot are measure for whatever they did. Had they not done more than what they were supposed to do, there would not have been makot. There would not have been punishment, because they were agents of Hashem. They're being punished because they did a lot more. They exaggerated. They overdid it. For that they're being punished. Of course, they always to some extent have free will.
But like Hashem would know everything, that they would do that kind of thing?
Sure, Hashem knows anyway. But when they're still independent, sure. And when they are punished, it's only for their actions that they did on their own. Human being has free will in many areas. Hashem does not always allow him to carry out his evil plot. Hashem sometimes stops someone on his track and does not allow him to just do whatever he wants. But sometimes Hashem says, okay, go ahead, and you will have to pay for it later. So it has nothing to do with Hashem knowing beforehand that they're going to do it or not. People are still accountable for their actions. Anyway, in finishing up Parashat Shemot, we see that Am Yisrael is going through great pain and suffering, and Hashem, in reassuring Moshe that there is an end to this, appears to Moshe the very first time. How? Through a sneh, through a burning bush. What is the symbolism behind the burning bush? Moshe, you should know that just because the Jewish people are suffering, don't think I'm having it easy. Whenever the Jewish nation is in pain, the Shekhinah is in pain. The burning bush symbolizes the Shekhinah is also in pain. It is hard for Hashem to see us the way we are. But Hasneh eno ukal. The sneh, the bush, was not being consumed by the fire. Hashem is reassuring Moshe, despite all the pain and the suffering, despite all that Am Yisrael will go through, no one will be able to destroy them. They will never be consumed. I will always be there to protect them. That's Parashat Shemot. Now we go into Parashat Vaera. In Parashat Vaera, and towards the end of Parashat Shemot, we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is hardening the heart of Paro. Ki ani chbadti et lev Paro. I am the one that hardened it. Paro in the beginning was stubborn himself, but in the end Hashem is hardening it. Even if you want to, I won't let you give in. Very, very strange. We don't see this very often. You spoke about free will. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu is actually almost taking away his free will. How could that be? What's the explanation of hardening Paro's heart? So there are various explanations. The simple explanation is as follows. The rabbis tell us in the Gemara, Yitzro shel Adam mitchadesh alav b'chol yom. The Yetzer Hara renews itself every single day. He comes after us. And had it not been for Hashem's help, we would not be able to defeat the Yetzer Hara. In other words, we have Hashem's assistance in dealing with the Yetzer Hara. Without Hashem's assistance, eno yachollo, we would not be able to defeat the Yetzer Hara. How does Hashem help us? In all sorts of ways. To distract us, to get away from the Yetzer Hara. Kadosh Baruch Hu helps us. As long as we're willing to help ourselves. If you volunteer to be friends with the Yetzer Hara, that's something else. But if you want to get away with it, Hashem helps us. And it's because of Hashem's help that we can survive. When it comes to hardening the heart of Paro, all Hashem had to do is remove his protection. It's remove his assistance. And allow the Yetzer Hara to work freely. So it's not that Hashem was taking away his free will. Hashem was not controlling Paro. All Hashem needed to do was take away any assistance, no special assistance given to you. And if no special assistance is given to a human being, depending on his personality and his desires and his interests, depending on what he thinks about, he may land himself into a lot of trouble. That is one explanation. Another explanation is as follows. Hashem wanted to punish Paro, wanted to bring about the plagues, all the makot on him. But Paro is a human being, and an average human being who sees miracles becomes dumbfounded, becomes shocked, and says, stop. Right? He will do something about it. If a person sees incredible miracles, that is the normal reaction of any normal human being. But Hashem wants to punish Paro. So Hashem therefore numbs the senses of Paro. And what happens when Hashem numbs the senses of a human being, and a human being sees something incredible? You know what he says? What does that human being say? Ze'ateva. It must be we're having a tremendous amount of frogs. He starts blaming El Nino for the lice, or for whatever. It's the teva. It's not Neshamayim. When Hashem numbs the senses because he wants to punish him, that man, that individual will not become impressionable, and he will therefore attribute any miraculous event, teva, nature. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chas v'Shalom. So that is another form of achbadat halev. It's not a hardening, intentional hardening of the heart, but taking away any impressionability and allowing him to think, this God, there's another God. This is the God of fire, this is the God of snow. There's many ways a person can justify or can explain away some incredible event other than saying that it's a miracle. My Rabbi, one of my teachers, Elazar Kahana Zechet Tzadik Levracha, he had his own explanation. He says Paro is being punished by taking away his free will because he took away the free will of the Jews. By enslaving them and by not allowing them the freedom to do what they want, Hashem is therefore punishing him midah keneged midah to take away his freedom, his free will. It's another form of midah keneged midah, measure for measure. You took away other people's free will, you enslaved them, we will take away your free will. Just another idea. But what about all the Egyptians? The Egyptians did not give up so quickly. They were somewhat impressed, but not all of them recognized that this is the hand of Hashem. How could it be, after seeing so many miracles, that the Egyptians do not storm the palace and tell Paro, even though some of his servants did tell him, forget it, just let them go, enough is enough. But it took a while. Why weren't they impressed enough to pressure Paro to let Am Yisrael go? In other words, they were stubborn themselves. How could they be so stubborn? So the Chazon Ish, Zechet Tzadik Levracha, explains as follows. What is emunah? The essence of emunah is not just to believe. The essence, the true essence of emunah is to search for the truth. To want to know the truth. That is true emunah. One who's not always wanting to know the truth does not have a very strong emunah. Therefore, when Galileo discovered that the earth is not at the center of the universe, the sun is, for a long time many people thought, including the church, that the earth was the center of everything. And everything rotated around the earth. And he discovered through his telescope that no, the sun is the center of the earth, and the earth rotates around the sun. And many other things. When he came out with his discovery, it shattered the old beliefs of the church. And they were very much afraid of him. And they went out after him. And they pressured him not to disclose it. In the end, it was disclosed anyway. What do they have against him? Isn't this the truth? What do you have against the truth? A good example of a group or of individuals who don't care about the truth. If you don't care about the truth, then nothing will impress you. True emunah, therefore, is not enough to believe. It's the earnest desire to always know the truth. Hachbadat alev, as it is being called in Torah, the hardening of one's heart, not to become impressionable, not to believe, not to become humble, comes, according to the Kabbalah, where does it start from? From the zohama of the Nahash, from the poison that the Nahash put into Adam and Chava. What was the poison that he put into Adam and Chava? That he convinced them, V'yitem kelokim, you will be just like gods. If you eat from this, you will be just like God. You will be able to know the difference between good and evil. What is this whole idea of being like God? What was the Nahash trying to tell him? The Nahash was trying to tell Adam and Chava, trying to tell all mankind, why be dependent on God? You should be free, chofshi, do as you wish. Why have to rely and be dependent on some other being? You can be a God yourself. This is what is in the back of the mind, because of every individual, because of the Zohama, because of that poison, because of the first time the Nahash convinced Adam and Chava, you can be on your own. You don't need a God, Chaz v'shalom. And because of that idea in the back of a human's mind, because he has that Zohama, that poison, he sometimes thinks he doesn't need God. I don't need to believe in that. It's not necessary. That is why it is no wonder why in many of the science books, biology, and the like in the high schools today, they don't even suggest as an alternative to the creation of the world that it was created by God. No, that's out of the question. It's all either evolution or Big Bang or who knows what. But what about the other possibility, which is more logical? No, that's not even a possibility. I've made up my mind, don't confuse me with the facts, like they say. I don't want to know. I've already made up my mind. That is the Zohama, that poison of the Nahash. You don't need God. Why need God? You are God, be God yourself. Don't be dependent, because believing in God creates dependency on Him. You don't want that. You want to be chofshi. You want to be free. That is why many Jews, unfortunately, are afraid to go to a seminar, afraid to go to a lecture, to a class. They're afraid to find out the truth. They want to be free to do as they wish. There's another form of atimut. There's another form of blockage of the heart. We spoke about stubbornness or hardening of the heart. There's another form of blockage which interferes with a person's reflecting on what is true and what is not true. And that happens as a result of mikotze ruach v'avodah kasha. That is what Moshe encounters with the Jewish people. He speaks to them in the beginning, they don't listen to him. Why? Mikotze ruach v'avodah kasha. They had a shortness of breath and they had hard work. Even though that is a description of what they were going through, it's also very symbolic of what many people go through in their life. They don't stop to think for a moment. They're so busy making money and thinking about their own personal life, they forget about their mission here. We're here temporary. We're not here to stay here forever. They build themselves big palaces like they're going to be here for 500 years. They make themselves 12 bathrooms. One for the morning, one for the afternoon, one for the evening. I don't know what they do with the rest of them. They invest so much in materialism in themselves, and they forget about their ultimate tachlit, the ultimate mission. It's called atimut, and I call it atimut mikotze ruach v'avodah kasha. They don't have a moment to stop. They don't have a moment to breathe. Mikotze ruach, they can't catch their breath. They're hard working, trying to make parnasah, trying to make ends meet, trying to save, and they don't think, they don't have the time to think, to reflect about the real tachlit. That also causes a certain atimut, a certain blockage in one's heart that does not allow him to become impressed by what's going on. Do you know what's going on around you in the world? You know what's going on in Israel? Just stop for a moment. We have over 5 million Jews there. It's beautiful. The kibbutz galuyot, in gathering of the diaspora, is happening before our eyes. But nobody's paying attention. They're still asking, when is Mashiach going to come? It hasn't happened. But it's already happening before our eyes, but we don't stop to think about it. That is why when Hashem performs miracles, whether it's the Scud missile attack against Israel, He does so for more than one reason. One of those reasons is to awaken us, to impress upon us. That's what miracles are for. What is the purpose of a miracle? If not to impress, that He's still around, He hasn't forgotten us, He's still the boss. But not everybody pays attention to the miracles. People ask, why aren't there miracles today like they were back then? They are miracles, you just don't pay attention. And when you do see something that is incredible, what do you say? Oh, it's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence that 39 missiles did not kill except for one individual directly for this. It's just a coincidence. I heard one scientist who was asked, what do you say about the 39 missiles not killing many people? Well, in order for Saddam Hussein to reach Israel with his missiles, he had to put a shorter load of dynamite, of explosives into the missiles. He had to shorten the missile, he had to shorten in other words, extend the missile range, and therefore put less of a payload and therefore not everybody was killed. Just look at the pictures of all the houses, the thousands of houses and roofs that collapsed. But he doesn't want to believe. So therefore he comes up with all sorts of ideas to explain what is to us a miraculous event. No, it's just a coincidence. So when Hashem performs miracles, it's not only to punish, it's also to impress upon us. As we will see next week in Parashat Bo, Hashem says, what I have done to Am Yisrael, what I have done to Egypt, to the Egyptians, is lemat tesaper v'oznei bincha uven bincha. It's not only to punish them, it's to punish them, but it's also in order for you to remember, to become impressed yourself. Look, Hashem is there. He's delivering on what He promised. He's taking you out. So the miracles are also intended to impress upon us, the Jewish people, to strengthen our emunah, to awaken to the fact that Kadosh Baruch Hu has not abandoned us. Yeah.
But we learned that 80% weren't impressed enough to leave.
Yeah, we'll talk about maybe that next week. Why not everybody left? Why not everybody was impressed? Why not everybody agreed to leave and so forth? Actually, in the time of Eitzara, in the time of pain and suffering, when the Jewish people are going through trouble, you find all sorts of reactions. You saw the reactions of the policemen, the Jewish policemen, who were hit by the Egyptians because they did not force the Jews to work harder. You see great heroism. You see the heroism of the women. And you see some lowlifes too, like the Tan ve'Aviram, wicked people. In any situation, but especially, unfortunately, in a situation where people are suffering, you see who's truly a good man and who is a wicked man. And this happened during the Holocaust too. You had the kapos, the Jewish kapos, who were like policemen appointed by the Germans. Some of them were kind to their brothers. Many of them were no good. They were willing to give in to the authorities, another Jew, so they can get a better breakfast, which consisted of a little bit more sugar and cocoa. You see how a person, a human being, can stoop so low just for his own interests. So you see the best and you see the worst. You have all kinds. And that somewhat explains why some did not want to leave Egypt.
Majority don't.
Yeah. Another reason why people do not become impressed by miracles is because they've already made up their mind that, in other words, they haven't said so clearly, but in the back of their mind, they've already made up their mind that nothing will affect them. That is why it is not correct for someone to ask, or for someone to say, if Hashem would only make me one miracle, I will be a believer. Many people say so. Let Hashem make one big miracle, and I will put on a kippah on my head. The reason why that's not right to say, it's fallacious, is because there were many, many miracles in the past during the time we had a temple, and there were sinners too back then. The miracle does not make one a believer, especially those who have already made up their mind. They're not going to become impressed. It will not change their mind. So why do they say, show me a miracle? They say so in order to justify their actions. In other words, they already have an agenda. They already have a certain lifestyle that they want to have. And they know that there won't be a miracle so quickly. Let there be a miracle, and then I will believe. Once the miracle occurs, of course they say it's nature or something else. There was such a woman during the Scud missile attack. After the war finished, she came to a rabbi and she says, Rabbi, I want you to release me of a vow. I made a neder during the Scud missile attack. What was your neder? When the missiles were coming down, I made a neder to Hashem that I will start keeping Shabbat. But now the war is over, so please release me of my vow. So, yeah, you see, that's what we're talking about. Another reason why Hashem, by the way, does not make miracles every day is because he proved himself once already. There is a story with a boy who got a very prestigious diploma for being a good pianist. He knew how to play very well. And he got a big diploma. And he hung it on his wall. One day a friend comes to visit his father, and the friend hears about the boy's achievement, and he asks the father, why don't you tell your son to start playing for me? I want to see if he's really great, like they say. And the son says, no, my diploma says that I don't have to prove it to every guy who wants me to prove it to him. Every Joe is going to come in, is going to ask me to prove it to him. I already proved it once. That's what the diploma is for. Hashem says, I already proved it once when I gave the Torah in Har Sinai, the Kolot Uvrakim, and I spoke, and I gave the Torah. I already proved it once. I don't have to prove it to every guy who wants me to prove it. Make me a miracle, Hashem, and I'll believe. No, Hashem says, I already proved it once. It's enough. The truth is, whoever wants to know the truth does not need miracles. Whoever does not want to know the truth, all the miracles in the world will not help him. Just like to end with a few more points, we say in the Agadah of Pesach, had Hashem not taken us out of Egypt, we would still be enslaved to Paro b'Mitzrayim. Adayin hayinu meshubadim leParo b'Mitzrayim. How could that be? We would still be in Egypt? The answer is as follows. It does not mean that we would be physically in bondage in Egypt. Assuming we would have left already many years later, there's a worse bondage than a physical bondage, and that is a spiritual bondage, when we adapt the ideas, when we assimilate the ways of the Egyptians. Had Hashem not taken us out from Egypt, we would have been stuck there. We would have adopted the culture of the Egyptian. We would have intermarried and assimilated. And our whole culture would have become an Egyptian culture. That's what it means. Because a true redemption is the redemption of the false ideas. Hashem did not want us to assimilate to their ways. That was more dangerous than anything else. It is mentioned in the Midrash that Am Yisrael was redeemed because of certain merits. Because of the zechut that we did not change our language, we did not change our name, and we did not change our clothing. But wait a minute, Hashem would have taken us out of Egypt anyway. What does it mean because of these merits? The answer is that it's because of these merits that we did not sink to the 50th level of Tum'ah. In other words, Hashem would have taken us out anyway, but it was through these merits that stopped us from sinking to the lowest level, the 50th level of Tum'ah. The 50th level of Tum'ah being the level of heresy and complete assimilation and intermarriage. So we had certain merits that helped us stop from just sinking to the lowest level. Rabbis tell us in the end of days we will sink to the lowest level. But because we have the Torah, we will be able to come out of it. Something we did not have in Egypt, and that is why Hashem had to remove us quickly. Unfortunately, we are in a very, very low level, but Baruch Hashem, those of us who are attached to the Torah are able to protect themselves from sinking to that level. One of the greatest difficulties that people have coming out from these low levels is the difficulty an alcoholist has, dropping his bad habit. And Dr. Twersky explains that even though an alcoholist sees the pain that he's going through, that he's suffering in the pancreas from over drinking, that he's destroying his marriage, that he's losing his job, everything is falling apart. Even though he sees all of that, he suffers as a result of denial, rationalization, and compulsion. Denies that he has a problem, rationalizes when something does happen to him that it happened for some other reason, and later on he has this problem of compulsion, of continuing to repeat the same mistakes. And Dr. Twersky explains that the only way to deal with it is by first working on the problem called denial. People have a problem with this. This is not only with alcohol, with any other area. This is what sinks a person all the way down, when he denies that he has a problem. The only way to get out of this is to work on the denial, and by working on humbleness, for example, a person can help himself greatly by reminding himself of what his true mission is in life, studying Musar. But you need professional help. One who has a big problem like that needs professional help. But you can work on it. You have to start with the problem of denial and accept the facts as they are. There are 4 languages of redemption in Parashat Vaera. You have the Ve'otzeti, Ve'itzalti, Ve'ga'alti, Ve'lakachti, which are the 4 cups of wine that we have on Pesach. Each one represents a different stage in the redemption of Egypt. Each one represents a different stage in the redemption Latid Lavo right now. Hashem will remove us, bring us back, take us back as a nation. They're the various stages. But the last stage is what? There's a 5th language called Veheveti, and I will bring them to the land. That represents the cost of Eliyahu. Eliyahu Navi will be the one that will help us come back. How can that happen? Only if we fulfill the words that are written right before Veheveti. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh says Veheveti never came true altogether, because the ones who died in the desert did not come to Israel. That's only because Vidatem ki ani Hashem Elokechem. If you will remember that I'm your God, if you will fulfill the Torah mitzvot, only on that condition will Veheveti come true as well. And that is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting, to bring us back to Eretz Israel on condition that everybody awakens to do teshuvah and recognize ki ani Hashem Elokechem.